My parents sent my husband a watch for his birthday, and the moment I laid eyes on it, I felt a chill run through me. I told him not to touch it, and he looked at me confused. "Why?" he asked. I didn't have a rational explanation, just a gut feeling that it was a trap. We didn't argue about it then and there. We decided to address it the next morning. Both of my parents received letters later and started shouting. The watch had arrived midweek. Nothing unusual about the packaging, just a brown box with a birthday sticker. But the moment I saw it, I knew something was off. We had just finished a bland dinner, probably frozen pizza, the kind that leaves you feeling guilty afterward. He was at the sink, rinsing the plates, and I was wiping the counter when the doorbell rang. That's when we found the box. He opened it without much thought, like you would with socks. "Oh," he said, "your parents sent me something." I glanced over, surprised. "Did they?" "That's nice," I replied. He pulled out a velvet box, black and sleek, almost too sleek. My body reacted before my mind did. My stomach churned slightly, a faint warning. I dried my hand slowly as he was about to open the box. "Don't touch it," I said again, more firmly this time. He looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "What are you talking about?" "It's just a gift." I took a step forward, pulled a tea towel off the oven, and wrapped the box carefully. Even through the fabric, it felt too heavy. "Let's check something first," I said. He paused, unsure. "Check what?" I wasn't sure either, but I knew we needed to look into it. I placed the wrapped box on the table's edge, and he didn't laugh. That's when I realized he felt it too. The same unease, the same wrongness. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the watch box. It wasn't for memories, it was for evidence. Then I started searching online. Manufacturer logo, box design, serial number, retail listings, pricing. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. I showed him the screen. "Look at this," I said. The watch was worth $3,800. Silence filled the room. No one in my family sends gifts that expensive, not unless it's a medical bill or something desperate. My brother had just moved out recently, struggling to make ends meet with his new place. My parents weren't wealthy either. They lived off frozen veggies and outdated routines. I'd been quietly helping with their bills for years because that's what you do for family, right? So where did the money for the watch come from? He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and said, "Maybe they love me so much they skipped paying for heat just to buy this luxurious timepiece." I didn't laugh, and neither did he. The atmosphere shifted, subtle but undeniable. The watch was too much, and I couldn't ignore the gut feeling that something was wrong. I didn't want to believe it, not about my own parents, but I had a suspicion about where the money might have come from. And if I was right, this was more than just a present. It was something else. Something dangerous, a setup even. My parents would say they always treated us equally, and to some extent, that's true. But this gift, it was different. Growing up, I had this feeling that fairness was a concept only I truly understood. My brother, well, he seemed to glide through life without a care, without responsibility. It was like he had this invisible shield that made everything easy for him. I, on the other hand, was the one with the lists, the chore charts, the college applications. I was the one who did everything, while he got away with, well, everything. He had all these ideas about the world being unfair to gifted people who just hadn't discovered their gifts yet. It was frustrating to watch him drop out of university twice, once even forgetting he was enrolled. Meanwhile, I quietly paid my parents' phone bills. It was automatic for me, just something you do when you're the one holding the family together. Meeting my husband didn't change much in that regard. If anything, it added layers to the complexity of my life. He wasn't wealthy or influential. He wasn't even particularly tall, which was a point of disappointment for my mother. But he was the kind of person who would start a small local charity to serve hot meals to homeless people. And I fell in love with him almost instinctively, like settling into a warm bed after a long, grueling day. He began the charity from scratch. No family money to speak of, no investors. Just a few borrowed folding tables, a church basement, and too much heart for one person to bear alone. I started helping out on weekends. Initially, it was simple tasks like peeling potatoes and handing out tea. Then I started helping with the budget, and before I knew it, I was there every spare minute I had. We got married, and the charity began to grow. It wasn't rapid, but it was steady. Word spread, community support increased, and we found a few good donors who believed in our mission. We opened a second location, then a third. It was still modest, but we were making a difference, and that felt good. Around this time, my parents were approaching retirement. Their pensions and savings were inadequate. My brother was still at home, dabbling in business ideas, and often neglecting even basic responsibilities like taking out the bins. So we thought we'd offer them something meaningful, a way to stay engaged. We gave them part-time positions at the charity, admin work, outreach, event coordination. Nothing too demanding, but something real, manageable, and significant. It felt like a win for everyone involved. I thought we were all aligned, working towards the same goals. But then about 6 months ago, everything started to shift. My brother suddenly moved out. He didn't just rent a place, he bought an apartment. He claimed he had launched a tech startup, something about intellectual property. He couldn't discuss it in detail, NDAs, patents, secrecy, partnerships. I asked a few questions, but eventually gave up. He never really grasped tech or business, or maybe he was just lying to my face. He insisted things were going exceptionally well. Around the same time, a new food supplier entered the picture. It was my dad's idea. He approached us one afternoon looking like someone who had pulled off a clever trick and was waiting for applause. He presented a folder and explained he'd found a supplier who was supposedly better than our current one, healthier, cheaper, locally owned. My husband asked a few questions, reviewed the numbers, and they seemed to check out. We trusted him and signed the contract. 3 months in, the complaints began. At first, they were quiet. People mentioned the food tasted different. Then it got worse. People started getting sick, stomach cramps, vomiting. One man even ended up in the hospital due to dehydration. It was alarming. My husband was furious in a way I'd never seen before. He went into full audit mode, contacting shelters, scrutinizing invoices, demanding ingredient lists. What he discovered made him physically ill. It turned out the supplier was substituting products using cheap meat instead of quality meat, expired canned goods, and off-brand, unlabeled produce. I need to talk about something that's been weighing on me, something that's been living in the corners of my mind, refusing to leave. It's about this decision we made, my husband and I, that changed everything. It started with this catering company we had partnered with through my parents' charity. At first, it seemed like a good fit, like everything was lining up perfectly. But then, complaints started rolling in. People were getting sick after the events, and the invoices, they were charging us as if we were serving gourmet meals, when in reality we were just trying to provide decent food for those in need. My husband, he's a straightforward guy, decided to call a meeting with my parents. He wanted to end the contract, cut ties, and move on. But my parents, they didn't see it that way. They pushed back, hard. My mom said it was all a misunderstanding, just some mix-up in communication. My dad, on the other hand, insisted that people exaggerate and that the invoices were clear. He believed the numbers made sense, even though they didn't to us. It was strange, really. The more they defended the situation, the more desperate it all felt. My dad got defensive quickly, saying we couldn't just pull out of a deal because a few people weren't happy. He worried about ruining business relationships, worried it would look bad on them. He even said, "We're running a charity, not a restaurant," as if that justified everything. His anger wasn't just about the situation, it felt like there was something deeper, something beneath the surface that they weren't saying. They weren't just defending a supplier, they were defending themselves, their choices. And then, just as we were gearing up to send the termination notice, a package arrived. It was my husband's birthday week, and we hadn't planned much. Just a quiet evening with takeaway and a movie, maybe a walk if the weather held up. When the parcel came, he didn't think much of it. He smiled, made a comment about my mother finally remembering the date. Inside was a watch, wrapped in a luxurious black velvet box. It was heavy, too heavy. He was about to open it, to touch it, but something stopped me. I stopped him. You probably know the feeling, that gut instinct when something isn't right. The next morning, we barely spoke to each other. He made the coffee, I burned the toast. Not on purpose, but I didn't make more either. It somehow felt right, the burned edges, the silence between us, like we were both turning over the same thought, but afraid to say it out loud. The box still sat on the counter, wrapped in the tea towel I had used the night before, untouched, unopened, just sitting there, watching us. I wrote 2 letters, sealed them in plain envelopes. He didn't ask what I had written. He already knew. It was as if the watch was ticking, a countdown not just audibly but emotionally. He used a clean dish towel to hold it by the corners, careful not to touch the leather, the velvet, or even the box beneath. He didn't breathe until it was rewrapped and returned to its original packaging. Then we got in the car, and the drive was silent. We weren't arguing, we weren't distant, we were just bracing. It was like that calm you cling to before a storm hits. Not dramatic, just necessary. When we arrived at the charity office, my parents were already there, sitting at their desks, pretending to be busy. My mom was rereading the same email. My dad had a spreadsheet open, but was scrolling through his phone. Neither looked up when we walked in. We didn't stop at reception. We went straight to the staff room. It felt neutral, away from clients, away from onlookers. It was just us, under harsh lights and among mismatched chairs. My husband handed over the box and I passed them the envelopes. My dad looked down at both, then back up at us. "What is this?" he asked. "Open it," I replied. They did. 2 printed letters, polite, formal, immediate termination, 1 month's pay, no further involvement. My mom looked shocked, like she couldn't believe what was happening, like something was caught in her throat. "You're firing us?" she asked. Yes, just like that, exactly like that. My dad stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the linoleum. "We're your family," he said. "Not anymore," I replied. I remember the way he looked at me, almost like I was speaking in tongues, like I had completely missed my cue in a play we were both supposed to know by heart. "We'd done nothing wrong," he said, with a certainty that felt rehearsed, but I wasn't here for a performance. I reached for my phone, pulled up the browser, and thrust the screen in front of them. The watch, the price, the glaring evidence. I asked where it came from, demanding an explanation. Silence. I pressed on, reminding them of last winter when the boiler broke and we couldn't afford to fix it. That bill I had to cover for them. Still, silence. So I asked again, "Where did you get the money for the watch?" My father just shrugged, claiming it was a gift. "A gift? An incredibly expensive one," I countered. My mother chimed in, saying they thought he deserved something nice, as if generosity was on trial here. No, I wasn't accusing them of that, just questioning the suspicious nature of it all. That's when they both started talking over each other, voices full of urgency, flustered and defensive. They insisted I didn't understand how hard it's been, that the supplier was legitimate, and they were just trying to support my brother. That last part brought me to a halt. What did he have to do with this? My father shut down, and my mother turned away. Why were they pushing so hard for that company? I asked them bluntly. Why lie about the food quality? People had gotten sick, and they knew it. They claimed people were exaggerating, trying to brush it off. But one person ended up in the hospital, I reminded them, and my father had no response to that. I could see it then, clear as day. They had something to gain from that contract. My mother snapped that they hadn't done anything illegal, and my dad added they'd just made a smart deal. They accused me of making it ugly. I leaned in, piecing it together. So that's where the watch came from. They didn't correct me. I felt a burning in my chest, not anger, but a slow confirmation of what I feared. I told them they knew what they were doing and gave the watch to him, knowing what it would look like, knowing the potential consequences. My mother crossed her arms, saying it wasn't like they told him to accept it, but they knew what it was. Still no answer. They put him in danger, put the charity in danger. For what? Do they want to be poor their whole lives? My dad shot back, asking if I wanted to keep scraping by while others made real money. People got sick, I reminded them. No one had died yet, he said. Silence. Then he accused me of caring more about appearances than my own family. I nodded slowly, not in agreement, but because I finally understood. No, I said, I care about right and wrong, and this was wrong. What they did was wrong, all of it. My mom looked on the verge of tears. I told them I needed space, a lot of it. No more calls, no more favors. I was done. My dad said I didn't mean it, but I looked him in the eye and told him I did, and I wanted them to leave. They left, not with a dramatic slam of the door, just a slow, quiet exit like they knew something had changed and it couldn't be undone. I stood there watching them walk away. I didn't cry or scream. I held on to the silence, feeling like, for the first time, I was the adult in the room. It all began with a pounding on the door. Not a polite knock, but a forceful, insistent thud, like someone was trying to make a point or break it down. I opened it slowly to find my brother standing there, face flushed, breathless, like he'd sprinted across town in worn-out shoes. "What did you do?" he blurted out, skipping any pleasantries. No hello, no preamble, just straight to the point. I met his gaze, feeling the weight of what had transpired between us all. I remember the day clearly, the way things can be etched into your mind when your world starts to tilt. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through emails when I felt his presence behind me. My husband had a way of entering a room quietly, his calmness a stark contrast to the storm that had been brewing around us. He asked me if my brother was there. I nodded, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. My brother's arrival was never without reason, and this time was no different. As soon as he appeared, the tension in the room thickened. My husband, always the mediator, asked him to explain what was going on. My brother was exasperated, his eyes rolling as if we were the unreasonable ones. He accused us of trying to ruin everything, of putting us all in danger. I could see where this was heading, and I knew I had to stay calm. So I asked him what had happened, keeping my voice as steady as I could. He started talking about a contract that was now null and void, a deal that had fallen apart because we refused to go along with it. Apparently, people were asking for their money back, people who were not known for their patience or kindness. I asked who these people were, already suspecting the answer. My brother hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough for me to understand. These were dangerous people, people you didn't want to cross. They had paid up front for something that we had no intention of delivering, and now they wanted their money back. He was painting himself as the victim in all this, but I couldn't let that slide. I pointed out the obvious. He had taken money from them without considering the consequences. And now, because we refused to distribute expired meat, we were supposedly the bad guys. He insisted he didn't know the food was bad. It was typical of him, never asking questions as long as there was money to be made. I reminded him that maybe he shouldn't have bought his apartment with money that didn't belong to him. He claimed he was helping the family, but my husband finally stepped in, pointing out that my brother was really just helping himself. The room fell silent after that, a heavy, suffocating silence. My brother's voice was quieter when he spoke again, suggesting that if we brought the supplier back, everything could be fixed. But I was firm. We weren't going to reinstate them. He told us to think about what would happen if we didn't. It felt like a threat, even if he claimed it was just a fact. We didn't slam the door in his face as he left, but it was a close call. The aftermath came swiftly, like a tidal wave crashing over everything we had built. 3 days later, the first posts began to appear. They were anonymous, scattered across old Facebook groups, local forums, and even on our charity's Google reviews. Accusations flew like arrows. Did we know the manager drives a car worth more than the donations we received? Where did the Rolex come from? Were we really feeding the homeless, or just ourselves? One of the accounts posted a blurry photo of a watch, but it was unmistakable. The digital assault continued, with messages sent to our donors, emails filled with insinuations, and hashtags spreading like wildfire. By the end of the week, the damage was palpable. 2 sponsors had paused their donations, and 1 event had been quietly canceled. We gathered in the office late one night, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. My husband looked worn out, the stress etched into his features. Our staff was visibly shaken, and I found our volunteer coordinator in tears in the kitchen. I stood in front of the bulletin board, staring blankly at the wall, hoping for answers that wouldn't come. Then my phone rang. It was the State Department of Charitable Oversight, a body I hadn't even known existed until that moment. They wanted to discuss leadership reviews and had received anonymous tips about mismanagement. Their politeness made it all the more jarring. I hung up, meeting my husband's eyes. He didn't need to ask about the call, he already knew. The next day, my parents' number flashed on my screen. Whether it was them or my brother using their phone, I couldn't say. I didn't answer. I remember the day we went to the police station. It was one of those moments you know will change everything, a turning point. We gathered all the evidence we had, the volunteer testimonies, the screenshots of the attacks, every little detail about the contract. We laid it all out for them. The resistance we faced, the pressure, the subtle threats, even the email that seemed so innocuous but was anything but. The officer who took our statement listened without a hint of surprise. "You're not the first," she said. "This is happening more often these days, but you did the right thing by coming forward." Her words were meant to be comforting, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of doubt. Had we acted too late? Did the truth still have weight in a world where it often felt diluted by lies and deceit? As we left the station, I glanced back at the door. It closed softly, almost as if acknowledging the new chapter we were about to enter. A chapter where everything would finally be exposed. 6 months later, our story was everywhere. It was on the front page of the local paper, stretched across 2 pages in a regional magazine, even featured on a radio segment. It had everything that drew attention: a charity scandal, bribery, betrayal, and the plot twist no one saw coming: a daughter who turned in her own family. My parents were sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Conspiracy, fraud, bribery, these were the charges that led to their downfall. They were fined $50,000, wiping out most of their savings. Their reputation, once solid and respected, was now in ruins. No more friendly nods at the post office. No more cherished memories within the community. The court confirmed what we had suspected all along. The watch my father received was part of the bribe, along with a $15,000 payment quietly transferred to his account just weeks before the contract approval. This money was what my brother used to secure his apartment deposit. He didn't escape unscathed, getting probation and 200 hours of community service at a food bank, of all places. The apartment he thought he owned was seized. His catering company, revealed as a front, crumbled. Its CEO, once a respected figure, was sentenced to a year in prison, faced hefty fines, lost his license, and suffered a public downfall. The company's online presence vanished, and their name became a warning in nonprofit circles. For us, the nightmare was over. We were officially and publicly cleared. The regulator issued a statement, and soon donors returned. Volunteers came back, and my husband's leadership was reaffirmed by the board. There was a renewed sense of hope in the staff kitchen, where the coffee was as fresh as the optimism that filled the air. I went back to work, real, honest work. Work that truly makes a difference, grounding you and reminding you every day why you chose to stand up for what was right. Before I reported them, I feared the decision would haunt me. I imagined sleepless nights, waking at 3 a.m. with guilt gnawing at my insides. I expected to hear my mother's voice berating me for betraying my family. But the reality was different. I sleep better now than I did before. Each day I walk into that shelter, I see people enjoying a hot meal, hear genuine thank yous, and witness the impact of our work. The people we serve, they're the ones who truly matter, and with that comes a sense of peace. I did what was right, not what was easy or painless, but what was necessary. There's a clarity in that decision I never expected. I haven't spoken to my parents since everything happened. They sent me a letter, but I haven't opened it. It's not because I'm angry, it's because it's over. Some chapters in life need to close, and that's okay. This morning, as I entered the kitchen, the radio played something lighthearted and cheerful. The bread was freshly baked, and someone had spilled soup, laughing at their clumsiness. A new volunteer was demonstrating how to chop onions without tears. It was chaotic, noisy, but full of life. It was our space, and it felt right. So now, as I sit here reflecting, I ask myself and you, did it go too far or not far enough? Leave a comment below and subscribe to hear more of these stories.